America, American Morning. CNN tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. Eastern.
Up close tonight, The Game of Death. That's the name of a game show that was really a psychological experiment. It's playing out on French TV this week. Now, it's a game show format where contestants were encouraged by a rabid audience to shock another participant with what they think is a near lethal amount of electricity. The more he screams in pain, the more he gets shocked. Now, they had no idea that this was fake and that the participant was really an actor. For the producers of the show, the point was to demonstrate that how much people will blindly follow orders and how the allure of being famous and being on television can lead someone to do just about anything. Randy Kay reports.
It's called The Game of Death, and it's torture to play. On this French game show, contestants pose a question. But here's the catch. If their fellow player gets the answer wrong, he's zapped with increasing amounts of electricity, as much as 460 volts. The more wrong answers, the more voltage, the more pain. The audience shouts for more punishment. Some contestants are reluctant, but are swayed by the audience, demanding higher voltage.
But here's what the audience and contestants don't know. There is no electricity, no pain inflicted. The players, tortured for their wrong answers, are really actors hired to play the part. Their screams of agony, fake. In fact, this really wasn't a game show at all, but an experiment about how far some people are willing to go to inflict pain on a complete stranger.
Amazingly, only 16 out of 80 refuse to inflict pain on the others.
They're in a situation where they have to act quickly. They can't stop and think about what is the right thing to do. They have to act right now. All of those things lead people to respond to the situational cues.
The show is part of a documentary airing on French TV, which examines what its creators call TV's mind-numbing power to suspend morality and the striking human willingness to obey orders. When it was over and contestants were told it was all an experiment, some said they didn't even think about it, they just followed orders. Others said they were worried, but did not want to spoil the show. So they acted against their own principles when ordered to do something extreme.
Everybody is torn. Nobody thought that this was a lot of fun or something they enjoyed doing, but they could not find a way to stop themselves from going along with it.
The blind obedience in this case is being compared to the behavior of German soldiers ordered to commit atrocities inside the Nazi concentration camps. In fact, the show's whole premise is based on an experiment from Yale back in the 1960s, which used a similar method.
In the Yale experiment, the people inflicting the painful shocks thought the electricity was real too. That didn't stop 2/3 of them from giving the maximum shock available, 400 volts.
Most people will in fact act in this horrendous way and press the shock levers that they think are delivering very dangerous, if not lethal, electric shocks to another person. The moral there is not that people are horrible or that we're brutal or sadistic individuals. The lesson is really that in certain circumstances, in the right situation, the average, typical, well-adjusted person will act in these horrendous ways.
One added element in the French game show case, contestants had to sign a contract agreeing to obey orders. For them, there was no turning back. Randy Kay, CNN, New York.
So why would an average person be willing to inflict so much obvious pain on another human being? Sort of boggles the mind. Let's dig deeper with Dr. Drew Pinsky. I mean, I remember this experiment they had done in Yale, I think it was back in the 60s, where people were administering electric shocks.
That's right.
Doing it in front of cameras, in front of an audience, adds a whole other level of, I guess, pressure.
Pressure, that's right. And it's an interesting thing to think about. You know, what would make humans do that? Why would we be put together in such a way that we would be likely to listen to an authority even when it disavows our own sense of value?
And when the authority is actually the host of a game show.
A game show.
And an audience chanting.
Yeah, it's bizarre, isn't it? But I think in this case it speaks so much to sort of what we call sort of a mob mentality, a group mentality, where we lose the self to the group. And this is something that had evolutionary adaptation at one time. I mean, if we were attacked by a lion here in this room, if we all grouped together evidently and thought as a whole, we'd probably be more likely to survive. But the fact is, when we're in certain social situations, which of course we affect one another very deeply in social situations, it also has an adverse potential, which is we can lose our own sense of compass. We lose our sense of value. We lose our sense of where we are and what we're actually doing. And particularly in this case, I think they lose their sense of reality.
Well, one of the persons said that they didn't want to spoil programming by disobeying, which is just...
It's bizarre, right? Yeah. Yet if you were in that moment, and this is the part I think also very important to point out, we are used to thinking of or contemplating that thinking is something we should rely upon. But as you see, and even that explanation, her thinking distorted. Her thinking was set askew by the social circumstances. So beware your thought processes. You have to really sort of become aware of where you are, who you are, how your surroundings are affecting you. And we're not used to taking a break, stopping and thinking about that. We just listen to our thoughts, and sometimes they're off base.
There have been some who've likened this to some Nazis' activities during World War II. That you say, how can somebody do this, and that there's sort of this group thing.
That was the original intent of the studies back in the 60s, to show how people sort of had this ability to follow authority blindly, even when they were harming somebody else and doing something they would never do under other circumstances. And in a way, this study is a okay, because it's happened. We've proved it before. Right. It's just being shown again in a bizarre context.
It does say also something, I think, about the power of television.
Well,
or the power of the desire to be famous or something.
I think you're right. I think that's what it sort of gets under our skin with this thing. It's that it's about something as meaningless as television and fame and a show. So it's not even about an experiment with... The original study was with doctors in white coats that were sort of imbued with authority, and that's what the story... This is a good-looking talk show.
It's as if Howie Mandel had the power of life and death over these contestants.
That's a really unsettling...
Howie Mandel
nothing against Howie. I love Howie.
It's great, but like, this is the French version of Howie Mandel.
And that's right. And so it sits with us. It should sit in our craw the wrong way. And it's something that speaks volumes about the liability of our evolutionary heritage, frankly. I think it has a good potential in certain circumstances, but if we're not aware of its potential, shall I call it illicit consequence, we have to be very cautious.
It would be interesting to see this done in the United States.
Yeah, it's incredible. I bet you we could even make it a more bizarre circumstance here. I bet we'd be, particularly if it was something where you were participating in the media, or you were seen by the media, I think people would be even more persuaded in this country.
It's fascinating. Dr. Drew, thanks.
Pleasure.
Now, we're going to have more with Dr. Drew in a moment on another subject. Criminal charges connected to the death of actor Corey Haim. An arrest was made today tied to an alleged prescription drug ring. The latest on that ahead.